The night was sharp with Chicago's November cold. Wind scraped down Dearborn Street, scattering dry leaves across the cobblestones, while inside a bistro the warmth of wine and conversation spilled into the night. At a corner table sat Nathan Hale, 33, a man whose company's name appeared on half the skyline. Hours earlier he had closed a deal worth millions, but now the plate in front of him, a steak and mashed potatoes still steaming, was untouched. He stared past it, past the glass of red wine, as if the noise around him belonged to someone else's life. Then it happened. 3 girls stopped at the edge of the patio. Their jackets were thin, their shoes worn from too many winters. They looked to be the same age, triplets, no more than 9. They huddled together, their breath white in the air. For a moment they only stood there silent, staring at the plate Nathan had ignored. The one in the middle, her hands clenched in her sleeves, took a step forward. Her voice trembled, but her eyes didn't waver. "Sir, can we take your leftovers?" "Not for us, for our mom." The restaurant stilled. Knives froze above plates. A couple at the next table leaned closer. Waiters glanced toward the door. Even the music seemed to fade. Nathan looked at the girls. He saw the way they stood straight, despite the cold, how none of them reached for the food, how their faces held both fear and dignity. Something in him tightened. "What are your names?" he asked. "Emma," the middle one said. "Claire," added the girl at her left. "Sophie," whispered the one with the white knit cap. Nathan cut the steak into smaller pieces, wrapped it carefully in the paper from the breadbasket, and handed the bundle to Emma. "It's still warm," he said quietly. "They didn't touch it." Emma held it close to her chest, as though carrying a treasure. Claire pressed the paper shut to keep it from spilling. Sophie glanced up at him once, her eyes steady, then turned away. "Thank you," Emma whispered, and just like that, the 3 of them hurried down the street, small figures swallowed by the night. Nathan rose. His chair scraped the stone floor, breaking the silence. He left his card on the table and stepped into the cold, his eyes following the path where the girls had gone. They moved quickly, their shadows stretching beneath the streetlights. Nathan followed at a distance. He watched as they slipped through an iron gate and climbed the narrow stairs of an old apartment block. The paint was peeling. The hall light flickered. At the 2nd floor, they knocked softly. A door creaked open. A young woman stood there, pale, coughing into her sleeve. She leaned on the frame for strength. The girls lifted the warm parcel into her hands. For a moment her shoulders eased, a fragile smile touching her lips. Nathan froze at the foot of the stairs. The scene pierced through him. 3 daughters offering their sick mother a bundle of leftovers as if it were gold. The door closed. Silence returned. And Nathan Hale, a man who built towers and erased blocks with a signature, felt something he hadn't in years. A sharp ache in his chest, as though an old wound had just reopened. That night, walking back through the wind, he knew one thing with absolute clarity. He could not let this end with a single meal. The next morning, Chicago's winter sun filtered weakly through Nathan Hale's office windows. The skyline was clear, but Nathan's thoughts were heavy, looping back to 3 pairs of hungry eyes. He had signed million-dollar deals without a flicker of hesitation. Yet one simple question, "Can we take your leftovers?" had unsettled him more than any boardroom battle. On his desk lay untouched files. Instead, Nathan held a slip of paper where he had written only one name, Rachel. He didn't know why, but he needed to help without being seen. He made a call. Within an hour, a discreet delivery of groceries and medicine was on its way to the old building he had followed the girls into. Rachel opened the worn door. Outside, 2 paper bags rested on the step. Bread, milk, a bottle of cough syrup. Her daughters looked at her with expectant eyes. "Mom, is it for us?" Sophie whispered. Rachel's jaw tightened. She pulled the bags inside, then immediately walked them back out again. "No, we return this. We don't take charity." Emma frowned. "But you're still sick." Rachel's voice was firm, though her hands trembled. "What we need is work, not pity." She carried the bags down the stairwell and left them near the trash bin. From his car across the street, Nathan watched. The rejection stung more than he expected. He had thought food was the obvious answer. But Rachel's defiance spoke louder than her weakness. She wanted dignity, not handouts. Back in his car, Nathan leaned against the steering wheel. Childhood memories pressed in, rows of iron beds in a children's home, staff handing out meals with no names, no care. He remembered how invisible it felt to be a case, not a child. He whispered to himself, "She doesn't want charity, she wants a chance." By evening, he had an idea. The foundation arm of his company supported several community kitchens. He called the manager of one, a modest soup kitchen on the south side. "Find a spot for a young mother," Nathan said. "She can cook, clean, whatever is needed, no publicity. Just let her work." 2 days later, Rachel was approached by a volunteer from the soup kitchen. "We could use extra hands, small pay, but steady hours." Rachel hesitated. The offer felt strange, almost too timely. Yet she saw her daughters curled on a mattress behind her, their bellies not quite full. She swallowed her pride. "All right, I'll do it." That evening, Rachel prepared to leave for her first shift. The triplets clung to her coat. "Will you come back soon?" Claire asked. Rachel bent to their level. "I will, and I'll bring stories from the kitchen." What Rachel didn't know was that Nathan stood outside the kitchen that night, under the shadow of a street lamp, watching her arrive. He didn't step inside. He simply needed to see her walk through that door, not as someone receiving pity, but as a worker with her head held high. For the first time in years, Nathan allowed himself a quiet smile. The soup kitchen smelled of onions and warm bread. Rachel tied an apron around her waist, her hands slightly shaking. It had been years since she worked outside the home. Every cough reminded her of her weakness, but she pressed on. Behind the counter, volunteers called out orders. 2 bowls of stew, more bread on table 3. Rachel moved quickly, wiping tables, serving trays, refilling cups. For the first time in months, she was not just a mother fighting illness. She was useful. That evening, Nathan stood at the far end of the hall, unnoticed. He watched Rachel bend to speak kindly to an old man with worn shoes. He saw her daughters, Emma, Claire, Sophie, waiting at a side table, eating modest bowls of soup while doing their homework. The sight pierced him deeper than he expected. Children finding joy in the simplest meal. After her shift, Rachel carried the girls' empty bowls to the sink. Nathan stepped forward, finally letting himself be seen. Rachel froze. "Why? Why are you here?" Nathan's voice was steady. "I wanted to see if the work suited you." Her eyes narrowed. "You arranged this, didn't you?" Nathan didn't deny it. "Yes, but only because you asked for work. I respected that." Rachel studied him, torn between pride and gratitude. Finally, she said quietly, "I'll keep the job, but I don't want favors beyond that." Nathan nodded. "Then no favors, just work. And if you need anything, you ask me directly. No hiding food on your doorstep anymore." For the first time, Rachel's stern expression softened. It wasn't a smile, but it wasn't rejection either. As Nathan turned to leave, Sophie tugged at his sleeve. In her tiny palm was a folded napkin, covered in crayon drawings, 3 stick figures holding hands with the taller figure. "That's you," Sophie whispered. "So you don't forget us." Nathan blinked hard, unable to answer. He slipped the napkin into his pocket like it was more valuable than any contract he had signed. Later that night, Nathan sat alone in his penthouse. The napkin lay on his desk, next to a thick folder stamped with bold letters, "Redevelopment Proposal, West Side Tenement." The same building where Rachel and her daughters lived. His chest tightened. He had pushed the project forward himself months ago. Now, every line in that folder meant the eviction of the only people who had touched his heart in years. The camera lingered on Nathan's face as city lights flickered outside his window. A man trapped between duty to shareholders and the quiet drawings of 3 little girls who already saw him as family. The next morning, Rachel arrived early at the soup kitchen. Steam rose from giant pots, and her daughters sat quietly in the corner, flipping through worn school books. She moved with purpose, wiping counters, serving trays, keeping her head high. Nathan stepped in, dressed in a gray suit that contrasted with the stained aprons around him. Conversations dropped. He ignored the curious looks and went straight to Rachel. "Can we talk?" he asked. Rachel's jaw tightened. "Here?" "In private." She led him to the back corridor, near a stack of canned goods. The fluorescent light buzzed above them. Nathan took a breath. "Your building. The company bought it months ago. The redevelopment starts in weeks." Rachel's face drained of color. "So this was your plan all along? Give me a job, then take my home?" "No," Nathan said quickly. "I didn't know you lived there, but now I do, and I want to find another way. Rachel's voice trembled, but her words were sharp. Another way? To you it's a project. To us it's the only roof we have. Nathan had no defense. He only managed, I'll fix it. Rachel's eyes flashed with something between fury and disbelief. People like me don't survive on promises, Mr. Hale. If you really want to help, stop the bulldozers. She walked away, leaving Nathan in the humming silence of the corridor. That evening, the boardroom on the 42nd floor was all glass and steel. Charts glowed on screens, voices sharp with numbers. A director pointed to the redevelopment plan. Projected profit, $200 million. Demolition scheduled. Hale, sign it. Nathan's pen hovered above the paper. His phone buzzed on the table. A message from Emma, typed clumsily on an old borrowed phone. Mom is sick again. We keep her warm with blankets. Thank you for the soup job. Please don't take our home. Nathan's grip on the pen shook. His vision blurred. For a moment, he saw not numbers, but 3 small faces lit by hope. He set the pen down. We need to reconsider. The room erupted. Reconsider? Are you out of your mind? Investors are waiting. We don't run a charity. Nathan straightened his back, feeling the weight of every pair of eyes. Sometimes doing the right thing costs more, but it's still the right thing. That night, Nathan drove to the tenement. Rain tapped against his windshield. He saw Rachel through the cracked window, coughing while her daughters curled beside her on a thin mattress. His chest ached. He pressed a hand against the steering wheel, whispering to no one, I can't let them lose this. The camera lingered on his face, determined yet torn, as thunder rolled over Chicago. He knew tomorrow he would stand alone against his own empire. Morning light spilled across the skyline of Chicago, but Nathan hadn't slept. He stood in front of the mirror in his penthouse, tie undone, eyes bloodshot. He had built an empire on numbers and steel, yet one handwritten message from a 9-year-old now outweighed every contract on his desk. At 10 sharp, the boardroom filled. Executives in tailored suits shuffled papers, their voices impatient. A director tapped his pen. Mr. Hale, he said, the deadline is today. Investors are waiting. We need your signature. Nathan laid the folder on the table. He didn't sit. His voice was steady but carried an edge. This project, demolishing the Harbor Street tenements, it stops, effective immediately. The room erupted. You can't do this. It's breach of contract. You'll tank the stock. Nathan's gaze swept across them. I've seen the families who live there. Children, a sick mother. You want me to put them on the street for profit margins? Not anymore. An older executive leaned forward, jaw tight. You're letting sentiment cloud judgment. We built this company on results, not pity. Nathan's reply was measured. We built it on trust, and I will not betray that trust to children who asked for scraps of food. Silence fell. His words hung in the air, cutting sharper than any financial projection. Hours later, Nathan walked out of the skyscraper into the autumn chill. Cameras clicked. Reporters already caught wind of the Hale redevelopment delay, but he ignored them. His car idled at the curb, yet he didn't step in. Instead, he turned and walked, blocks away, down cracked sidewalks until he reached Harbor Street. Children kicked a half-deflated ball against the wall. Laundry lines sagged between windows. He spotted Emma, Claire, and Sophie huddled outside, trying to sell small, handmade bracelets to passersby. When Emma saw him, her face lit up. Mr. Nathan. She ran to him, holding out a bracelet made of colored threads. We made this for you. Nathan knelt. The bracelet was uneven, a few knots clumsy, but it was a gift born of little hands that had nothing else to give. He slipped it onto his wrist, his throat tightened. Thank you, Emma. Rachel appeared at the doorway, pale but standing tall. Her expression was wary, her guard still up. You didn't have to come here, she said. Yes, I did, Nathan answered quietly. And I'm not leaving this street to the bulldozers. That night, Nathan returned home, sat at his desk, and drafted a new plan. Instead of a luxury complex, Harbor Street would become affordable housing, funded partly from his own fortune. He typed the words, then paused. His reflection in the dark window looked back, no longer just a CEO, but a man finally willing to fight for something beyond himself. As thunder rolled outside, Nathan pressed save. The next morning, the sun rose pale over Chicago, but Nathan knew a storm was waiting. At the company headquarters, news had already spread. The press called it the Hale standstill. Investors demanded explanations, board members whispered of replacing him. Nathan walked through the marble lobby, employees staring in silence, some with admiration, some with fear. In the executive suite, his assistant handed him a stack of urgent memos. "The board has called for an emergency vote. They want you out." Nathan only nodded. "Let them vote." Rachel was folding blankets near the window when Emma burst in. "Mom, he came back last night. He said they won't take our home." Rachel's hands froze. Her eyes searched the street below where Nathan's car had just pulled up. She didn't smile. When he entered, Rachel kept her voice even. "What you did at the board, I heard, but words in a room don't change papers already signed." Nathan met her gaze. "I've filed the new directive. The demolition is off the table." She studied him, wary. "You risked everything for us?" His answer was quiet. "Not for you, for what's right. But yes, you and the girls showed me what I had forgotten." Rachel looked away, covering her cough. Trust was not rebuilt in a night. Yet, Emma, Claire, and Sophie hovered at the door, eyes shining at Nathan. For them, walls had already fallen. The boardroom filled once again. This time the atmosphere was darker. One director slammed a folder shut. "You think this is noble, Hale? You've cost us millions overnight. Investors are threatening to pull out. We cannot let a sentimental CEO sink this company." Another voice added coldly, "Effective today, we move for removal." Nathan stood tall. "You want to remove me? Fine. But remember, every headline tomorrow will read how this board chose profit over children. Let's see which one of us investors will stand with." The room fell into uneasy silence. No one had expected him to fight with fire. That night, Nathan drove back to Harbor Street. The bracelet from Emma still circled his wrist. The girls rushed to greet him, chattering about school, about the soup Rachel managed to cook with donations. Rachel watched quietly. The man who once seemed untouchable now looked strangely human. His tie loosened, his shoulders tired, his shkez back, but his eyes clear. For the first time she whispered, almost to herself, "Maybe you are not your company anymore." Nathan heard. He didn't reply. He only bent down, helping Sophie fix the string of her worn-out shoe. The simple act said more than any speech. Chicago's skyline glimmered under storm clouds as the boardroom battle spread to the press. Newspapers painted Nathan as either the heart-driven hero or the reckless CEO. Investors threatened lawsuits. At Harbor Street, the atmosphere was different. The tenants, long resigned to eviction, now whispered Nathan's name with cautious hope. Children played in alleys again, yet Rachel remained guarded. That evening, Nathan returned to the cramped apartment. Emma jumped up. "Mr. Hale, look, we fixed Mom's blanket." Nathan smiled, kneeling to admire the clumsy stitches. Claire tugged his sleeve. "Will they still take our home?" His voice held steady. "Not if I stand." Rachel watched silently. Her cough echoed in the room. When the girls left to wash dishes, she finally spoke. "You've put yourself against men who don't lose. They'll come for you harder than you think." Nathan met her eyes. "Let them. If I walk away, I lose more than a company. I lose the part of me you and the girls gave back." For the first time, Rachel didn't argue. She simply lowered her gaze, hiding the flicker of fear and something else. The next morning, Nathan was called into a federal hearing. The board had leaked documents suggesting corruption, painting him as unfit. Cameras flashed, questions roared. In the chaos, Nathan spotted Emma, Claire, and Sophie outside the courthouse holding a cardboard sign scrawled in marker, "He saved our home." The image spread online within hours. Millions watched three small girls defending a man once known only as ruthless. But the board wasn't moved. That night, Nathan received notice. The vote for removal will proceed in 24 hours. At Harbor Street, Rachel folded laundry when Nathan arrived, shoulders heavy. "I might not be CEO tomorrow." Rachel's hands paused. "And if you lose? I still have choices, and I'll choose you." The room stilled. The words were simple, not grand. Yet Rachel's chest tightened, her eyes glistening. She whispered, "Then maybe I'll stop pushing you away." Emma peeked in, grinning. "Does that mean he can stay for dinner?" For the first time, Rachel didn't say no. The boardroom smelled of polished wood and cold steel. The next morning, Nathan walked in wearing the same suit he had worn for years of victories, yet today every step felt heavier. Cameras outside flashed as if recording the end of an empire. Seated across from him were 12 directors, their expressions sharpened by money and fear. "Mr. Hale," the chairman began, voice clipped, "you've put sentiment before shareholders. You've destabilized the company." Nathan met his eyes. I built this company not to erase communities, but to build them. If profit is our only compass, then we are lost. The vote was swift. 10 hands rose, only 2 lowered. Just like that, Nathan Hale was no longer CEO. He stepped out into the rain, tie loosened, shoulders stripped of authority. For years his name opened every door in Chicago. Now he was simply Nathan. Across the street, Rachel waited with Emma, Claire, and Sophie. They weren't dressed for press or spectacle, just children holding a paper bag of muffins. Emma ran first. "We saved one for you." Nathan crouched, rain mixing with the sting in his eyes. "I don't deserve it." Claire shook her head firmly. "You do, because you chose us." Rachel approached slowly, her cough softened but still there. She studied him, no pity in her eyes, only recognition. "They took your title," she said quietly, "but not your choice. That's the part that matters." For the first time, Nathan believed it. That night at Harbor Street, the tenants gathered in the courtyard. Word had spread, Nathan had fallen. Yet instead of dispersing, they lit candles in the rain, lining the balconies with flickering light. Rachel whispered, almost to herself, "They're not afraid anymore." Nathan looked at her, then at the girls weaving between legs and candles. He realized this was no ending. It was the beginning of a war not fought in boardrooms, but in hearts and homes. Rachel finally said the words she had guarded for weeks. "If you're staying, then stay not as a CEO, but as part of this." Nathan exhaled, a sound half relief, half surrender. He took her hand. It was small, roughened from work, yet steady. And in that fragile moment, under candlelight and rain, Nathan Hale was no longer the man who lost everything. He was the man who had finally found where he belonged. The rain had not stopped by dawn. Harbor Street was alive with candles that had burned all night, wax melted on railings, windows glowing like watchful eyes. For the first time, the tenants felt they had someone to stand with, even if that man no longer wore a crown of power. Nathan woke on a worn-out couch in Rachel's apartment. The girls were already awake, whispering as they set out bowls of oatmeal. He blinked at them, unshaven, stripped of his polished armor, yet lighter somehow. Emma grinned. "You're up. Mom said you can fix the window if you're staying." Nathan chuckled, picking up the loose frame. "I've negotiated billion-dollar deals, but this might be tougher." Rachel handed him a screwdriver. "Good. Let's see if you can manage something real." There was no sarcasm in her tone, just quiet trust. But outside that fragile warmth, the storm gathered. The chairman called a press conference. "Nathan Hale is no longer aligned with our values. He acted recklessly, endangering shareholders. We will proceed with redevelopment immediately." Reporters swarmed Harbor Street, their cameras hunting for a story. Instead, they found children lining the balconies with hand-painted signs, "Homes, not towers." One journalist shoved a mic at Nathan. "Mr. Hale, you've lost your position. What's left for you now?" Nathan paused. Behind him, Emma clutched his sleeve, eyes wide. He spoke clearly. "What's left is what should have been first. People. You can take my title, you can strip my office, but you cannot take their right to live." The clip went viral within hours. Millions watched, millions shared. Ordinary families, single parents, veterans, teachers, voices long ignored, found themselves in his words. That evening, Nathan found Rachel on the stairwell, coughing softly, clutching a stack of unpaid medical bills. He sat beside her. "You don't have to carry this alone." Rachel shook her head. "I'm not asking for rescue, but maybe it's easier when someone walks beside you." Nathan reached for the papers, then her hand. "Then I'll walk." Her silence was not resistance, it was acceptance. By the week's end, petitions flooded City Hall. Protesters filled downtown with placards and chants, and in the middle of it, 3 little girls sat on the shoulders of neighbors, voices rising higher than any megaphone. Claire shouted, "He gave up everything for us. Now we stand for him." The mayor, cornered by the wave of public support, demanded a review of the Harbor Street project. For the first time, the board's fortress cracked. The boardroom was no longer his, but Nathan walked into it anyway. Reporters clogged the lobby, their cameras flashing as he pushed through. On the top floor, the men who had once called him their golden boy now stared with venom. The chairman sneered, "You've stirred the crowd, but protests die down. Money stays." Nathan dropped a stack of petitions on the table, tens of thousands of signatures, each a name, a story, a plea. "This is not noise. These are lives. You build towers, but you've forgotten who must live beneath them. One board member leaned forward. You have no seat here. Why come back? Nathan looked at him, voice steady. Because this was never about a seat. It's about standing where I should have, long ago. Harbor Street overflowed with families, candles in hand, workers in uniforms, children on their parents' shoulders, elderly clutching signs. At the front, Emma, Claire, and Sophie held a banner painted in uneven strokes. Homes are our future. Rachel stood with them, fragile but unyielding. When a reporter asked, she answered simply, We're not asking for charity. We're asking to live. That night, leaked documents hit the press. Smear campaigns painted Nathan as a fraud, Rachel as a scammer. The city shook with doubt. Rachel crumbled on the stairwell, tears in her hands. They'll never believe us, they'll crush everything. Nathan knelt before her. Then we show them not just words, we show them a home worth fighting for. 2 days later, the mayor announced an emergency hearing, public broadcasted live. The board expected to win. But when the cameras rolled, something else unfolded. One by one, residents stepped forward. A veteran, a nurse, a teacher. Then Emma climbed the podium, her voice trembling but clear. My mom works hard. She gets sick, but she still tucks us in. Mr. Hale gave up everything to help us. If you take our home, where will we go? The chamber went silent. Then Sophie placed the handmade bracelet Nathan once wore on the desk before the mayor. Claire added, He's not perfect, but he chose us when he didn't have to. Millions watched. The city held its breath. The mayor looked over the room, then at the board, his face unreadable. We have heard enough. Tomorrow, this council will decide the fate of Harbor Street. The gavel struck. Outside, Rachel reached for Nathan's hand. For the first time, she didn't let go. The city council chamber was packed. Camera crews lined the walls, the air thick with heat and whispers. Nathan entered quietly, not as a CEO in tailored suits anymore, but as a man standing beside the people he once overlooked. Behind him, Rachel walked slowly, Emma and Claire studying Sophie at her side. The mayor adjusted his glasses. We are here to determine the future of Harbor Street. One by one, board members argued their case. Charts, profits, projections of a shining skyline. Their voices echoed like steel, cold and sharp. When Nathan's turn came, he didn't bring slides. He placed a single photograph on the table. 3 little girls sharing a single meal in a dimly lit room. His voice was steady. This is the truth behind your charts. Every tower you raise should begin with people, not erase them. A councilman scoffed. Are you suggesting sentiment can replace revenue? Nathan met his gaze. I'm suggesting humanity is the only foundation that lasts. Rachel was called next. She hesitated, coughing lightly, then gripped the microphone. I don't stand here as a victim. I stand as a mother. We are not asking for charity. We are asking for a chance. To work, to live, to raise children who don't have to beg for leftovers on cold nights. Silence filled the chamber. Cameras zoomed in. Millions watched. Then Emma stepped forward without being called. If Harbor Street goes, where will we sleep? Where will Mommy rest when she's sick? Her voice cracked, but she didn't look away. Claire and Sophie joined her, their hands linked. The mayor's gavel struck once. Enough. The council will vote. Hands went up, first against. The boardroom allies smirked. But then, a shift. One councilwoman hesitated, lowered her head and raised her hand for the community. Another followed. Gasps rippled across the room. The final tally, Harbor Street saved. Outside, the crowd erupted. Tears, laughter, chants. Rachel clutched her daughters as Emma whispered, Mommy, we can stay? Rachel nodded, overwhelmed. Nathan stood a few steps away, eyes wet. The 3 girls ran to him, wrapping their arms around his waist. For the first time, he let himself cry openly. Rachel approached, her voice quiet but steady. You gave up everything.